Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege for me to be able to speak to you this afternoon in this special location. Turkey, or southern Turkey, was associated with the domestication of the sheep. And about 10,000 years ago, the dawn of civilization, when we invented cursive script or writing, and modern mathematics and astronomy. So here we are talking about the future of this industry and this amazing place has such a story to tell. So much of what you've just heard in these presentations has been about minimising harm. The presentation I'm going to give you focuses on also minimising the harm in how we talk about ourselves, the metrics we use to measure our footprint. So I'm going to talk about a project called the IWTO Green Book Project. It's a project that is quite new. It is supported, the seed funding has come from the Italian textile industry through IWTO. It's a significant initiative, and I think you will find this quite interesting. The IWTO Green Book Project exists to assist people to understand wool, to connect through supply chain integrity programs to farmers who care, and to support decision-making. So we're going to draw from the latest research and provide new insights, including greenhouse gas reporting. We're going to provide practical information about sustainability systems and schemes and standards. But also we're going to try and challenge misconceptions about this fibre, this natural fibre of ours, and misleading narratives. So good progress has been made. The project really commenced on 1st of July. So I have the privilege of leading. Joe Investor has been appointed as to support me. We have a highly credentialed advisory committee with heavy representation from the IWTO Executive Committee, board, if you like. We've mapped the structure and content, and we've invested significant time in some new research that I will focus on in this presentation. There are 6 core components to this document. So if you think about it, we're going to talk about this fibre of ours as a biofibre, a distinction between us and synthetics. Talk about losing our roots, our disconnection from nature, microplastics, forever fibres, these tools like Hig and Pef, which mischaracterise and misrepresent. Talk about reconnecting, helping consumers reconnect and regenerate. We'll contextualise IWTO's role in specifying quality, in underpinning arbitration methods, and so on. And also provide a roadmap to technical resources. But this is got to be more than a book. This industry has a lot of material to draw on. If we just wanted to rehash the stuff we already know, we could do it easily. We've got a really proud tradition of being open, of investing in footprint. We hear from companies that have had a really successful journey to minimise harm. So it represents enormous collective effort, great individual effort to establish our eco-credentials, to defend them, but also to help companies and consumers reduce their footprint. But we're still rated really poorly when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. We need a new technical narrative. Now, almost all wool is produced in open, grassland, woody ecosystems. These things are living factories which convert light, water, and carbon dioxide into life. This process is called biogenesis, which means, if you look at the roots of the words, it's creating life from life. I'm going to focus on that green stuff in the foreground, because actually the carbon footprinting we're often confronted with has forgotten about that stuff. What this map is showing you is we combine the output from, this is NASA's satellite remote sensing. So you've got the green is coming from the MODIS satellite, so it's showing the vegetation growth intensity. The orange is actually the carbon dioxide measured in the atmosphere about 3 kilometres above our heads in the middle troposphere. What you're seeing here is the atmosphere breathing. This is the respiration of the planet. If you look at this, what you'll see is the seasonal pattern. So you'll see how when the spring and the warm season arrives, how carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere declines dramatically. And then in the winter, when growth slows, you'll see the concentration build up again. These are the lungs of the Earth. So this process, the green bit on here is where we're taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, and we're producing the oxygen we need to breathe, and we're converting life into chemical energy that we all depend upon. The numbers involved are staggering. I mean, Lisa, you spoke to, I think, 50 or 65 million hectares. Here, you'll see not only tropical areas which are persistently green, you'll see, but there's also major grassland areas, open rangeland that our sheep typically graze in. This process every year draws down around 155 billion tonnes of pure carbon from the atmosphere. Or if you talk about carbon dioxide equivalents, that's about 500 to 600 billion tonnes. In the process, it is consuming about 130 million terawatts of solar energy into chemical energy, the stuff of life. Now, life cycle analysis. We've invested a lot of time and effort in this field. But it tells a selective story. It evolved at a time when the world was waking up to a climate crisis. Its focus is very much on, when it comes to carbon footprinting, greenhouse gas emissions. That's the only thing it really focuses on. And it really only counts the drawdowns if they're permanent, if they are stable in the soil for 20 years or more, 100 years. That sort of carbon in the soil is inert. It's what they call non-labile. But it basically means it's not food for life. What we've done with our carbon accounting is create a system where we've actually extracted the life out of the system. We talk about soil carbon, we're not talking about soil organic. Most of the grassland system biology, most of the ecosystem, most of the carbon drawdowns are discounted. Existing good farm practices, which sequester carbon, don't count because they're classified as business as usual. The system was designed to foster carbon trading, carbon storage. And this is why our LCAs typically paint quite an unhelpful picture for wool. Here's the results from 10 life cycle analyses in the wool industry, some of which I was personally involved in starting years ago. What they show is that the median is around 21 kilograms of carbon dioxide per kilo of wool that leaves the farm. You can see the huge range. This stuff is hugely dependent on your assumptions. But at the end of the day, these 81 observations are what brands see. These are the observations that are populating inventory databases. This needs challenging. And it's because they've assumed away the positive impacts of biological sinks. They've assumed away the photosynthesis. This stuff needs to be challenged. There is an opportunity for us all. ISO has published a standard in 2018 for carbon footprinting. It's called ISO 14067. So about 6 years ago, they released the standard. It was in development in 2009-10. It was written, Beverly Henry wrote it in the first review we did of this area back then. It extends the standard ISO greenhouse or LCA methodologies from ISO 14040 and 44 to explicitly recognise biogenesis. This project commenced on the 15th of August with Cape Wool's, South Africa, and IWTO support. What we've done here is we take the classic LCA methodology. So with LCA, you've got to understand the way it works. It's an accounting system. So we have a model of a farm. We know how many sheep, how many lambs, how much wool we produce. We consult some tables and we work out how much dry matter, how much food they will have consumed. From those tables, we consult another set of inventories to work out how much manure they will have produced, how much eructation is the word, it's belching, birthing. From that, you end up with a greenhouse gas emissions intensity picture. We recognise this. We're not denying that wool production is associated with emissions. However, we need also, from that base, we can calculate, if we know how much the sheep are eating, we know how much biomass the sheep haven't eaten. In most Australian farms that are grazed, the sheep are only consuming about half of the growth in the pasture that is produced. What happens to the rest? So in this model, we're adding in photosynthesis and plant respiration characteristics. We're estimating the biomass production rate and the carbon and water content of the forages. This approach is designed, it works with the sort of satellite remote sensing that Lisa spoke to, because that actually, you can buy biomass estimates for your farm. We're also working on how the flow of carbon flows into the soil. This is flow modelling, okay? So where we end up with it is a picture of where the net we're putting more carbon in the soil than we are emitting. So I'm working with a South African economist, James Blockno, and this model, it will complement the standard emissions model by adding the biology back in. This is critical. In LCA, we don't count the costs of forming oil, the biology, the land area, the heat, the time, in the fossil fuels, but we do it for natural fibres. There's a fundamental inequity. So this process just wants to highlight the biological side of things. It's not intended for carbon trading, it's for reporting the flows on a property in a year. So phase one of this project's nearing completion. We're writing a paper for submission to a journal. We've taken the results of one of the most widely cited LCA studies for wool. It has 6 case studies. It's Australian, it covers all major wool production areas in the largest wool producing country. And it's really interesting what it shows. What it shows is that in all the cases we've looked at, if you count the photosynthetic drawdown from the atmosphere by the plants in the pasture, that the greenhouse gas sinks exceed the sources. So if you think about it, you have modelled, the red is the modelled emissions, the standard language that we are being measured by, that brands and retailers can find in our publications. The green is actually what photosynthesis is doing on those paddocks in that system. In every case we looked at, the model sinks through photosynthesis, through litter accumulation, through the manure and the urine that the stock put in the pasture, we count that, the sinks exceed the sources. The other thing about this, so we end up with a net. Okay, as I say, in every case that we looked at, the net was actually net sequestration, the flow. There was greater flow into the system than out from the soil. Really important finding. The other thing about this standard is it explicitly acknowledges the biogenic carbon in the product. So the wool on these farms is about 1.7 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent in every kilogram of greasy wool that leaves that farm gate. The same model is also equally relevant to the meat sector, the sheep meat sector. The key thing for all of us, and I thought I'd like to leave you with, is that all of the wool enterprises were net CO2 sinks. So they're actually contributors to global cooling. Think about how that contrasts with the message we've been giving the world. In my mind, the biological reality of our biological system has been misrepresented. It's something we need to change. There is an opportunity for us to create a new technical narrative for wool. It's not to deny emissions, but we need to tell the full story. The other thing about mapping these flows is it provides an excellent foundation for tackling one of our most important communication challenges. And that is, what does this trendy topic of regenerative actually do? Simplistically, this model can address soil health and carbon stocks. It needs some work, but it certainly gives us a direct guide on rainfall use efficiency, should I say, which is one of the key biological things that's going on here. The other things that come with this is we need to change the dialogue. And I think it was in your presentation where we talked about losing our carbon tunnel vision, okay? Talking about social, talking about the other parts of the planet, the important parts of this business. So, in summary, this project is now well underway. The key people are in place, the structure and the content's been mapped, an initial draft is in preparation, and there's some new research that's feeding in. And I really encourage your interest in that. At the end of the day, this information, this model needs to be applied to case studies. Many of you here, and the sorts of stuff Lisa's involved in, is complementary to this. There are many farmers out there who are actively measuring these metrics. So I'll leave it there and I'll acknowledge, I'd like to thank you for your support, your interest, for being here, and for your passion for this fibre. Thank you.